Alright, hello everyone. Today we're talking about foraging. What it is, and why you might want to do it or not. So I'm sure you've all seen on TikTok a lot of people doing all kinds of different things with like the wildflowers they find outside. They're making violet jam, they're making dandelion honey, they're making all kinds of really nice things from flowers that you can just find literally in your backyard. And while it's all very well and good, there is something to be said about what it means to actually forage, why it's good for you, right? They're not just making these pretty jellies and jams. There is a lot of benefit to foraging, especially those early springtime items. In fact, one study suggests that based on the bones they were finding from really like ancient people, like still hunter-gatherer people, they actually had very little nutrient deficiency because they were eating literally anything they could come across, which gave them a very wide variety of vitamins, minerals, and other things that when you have a consistent, stable diet of like certain types of foods, doesn't get as much nutrient out of it, right? Onions are really good for you, but if that's all you eat, you're not going to get all the other vitamins that you need to stay alive, for instance. Beyond that, a lot of these things that even if you don't want to eat them in a food, right, if there's some kind of hard bark or wood, a lot of them can still be used medicinally if you stick it in a tincture. So, you take some Everclear or really high proof alcohol and steep some of these things in it. You can make certain medicines that are still really helpful and use the native resources in your area. Overall, using the natural resources around you, yeah, it's a really great way to do all kinds of different things. You can help control invasive plants, right? You can control, say, like garlic mustard or these other things that are really delicious but really bad for our environment because they're like weeds that came over and started pushing out native ecosystems. And of course, you can also get closer to your land spirits. Magically, right, since we are doing our kitchen witchcraft thing, taking more from the land around you and developing a relationship with that land, giving things back for the things that you take, can help you get closer to the spirits of the land itself, of the water, the wind, the ground, all of it. And when you do that, not only are you getting more health benefits from taking things that are around you, but you can also just get a better magical understanding of where you are too. For instance, near me, I have a lot of things that aren't really super edible but are really useful for magic, like mugwort, especially yarrow. These aren't really things I would use in food, maybe in like a tea or in other kinds of medicine, but they're also still very useful magically and things that run quite a hefty price if you buy a lot of it at metaphysical shops. And that's another really great benefit of foraging outside. It saves money. If you can find all these things like ramps, right, like that, kind of wild garlic, if you can find berries that are edible, like wild strawberries or other kinds of berries like that, or find other greens, they're really, really good for you, and they're really, really good for your wallet as well. Especially in the springtime when all of these nutrient-dense plants are popping up, that replaces any kind of microgreens you would buy from the store, any kind of, other types of greens, lettuces and stuff. You can find it all right out there. For instance, my people, the Slovenians, we actually take the leaves of the dandelion and use it to make a certain kind of salad. You make like boiled potatoes and dandelion roots and, leaves, mix it all together, and there you go. You can eat the entire part of the dandelion plant, which is pretty cool and pretty useful to know. And of course, there are a lot of like silly reasons. If you look up like why should I forage, there are a lot of silly reasons, like getting more creative in the kitchen. Obviously, when you have all these different kinds of flowers and roots and random nuts and berries that you found all over the place, you gotta think a little bit outside the box to cook with them. But I would say all of the reasons that I just described are much better ones, right? So to recap, really good health benefits, and you can do not just food-related stuff, but medicine-related stuff too. I'm drawing all kinds of plants from my tea garden to make, certain kinds of teas that are relaxing, that are nice. Borage and lavender, a great combination for like a sleepy time tea, for instance. Second, you get closer to the land spirits. You get closer to all of the creatures that are coming around in your garden. Spending some time out there picking things, you get to know all the different bugs out there, the bees and the squirrels and all these other kinds of things. You just get more connected to the land that you live on, which is always a good thing. And third, it saves money. If you are the kind of person who's always trying to get like a bunch of different greens, or you really like to have edible flowers, or you like jam, or you like jelly, making your own from home is not that hard, especially if you know how to forage. But obviously there are some downsides to foraging, so if you are thinking that you want to do this, there are some things you gotta consider. and that is first and foremost how easy it is to die foraging, because a lot of people, especially if they haven't been professionally trained by a mentor or someone who's like been doing this for a long time, there are a lot of lookalikes out there. There are a lot of things that look like what you want to eat and are actually completely the opposite. Usually that happens in nature because the non-poisonous thing dresses up like the poisonous thing so that things don't eat it. Sometimes it can be as simple as, you know, the underside of the leaf being a different color than the one that you're actually looking for. Or it can be that, say, for instance, there's dandelion and a certain type of lookalike flower where the lookalike flower has boxy flower petals. The dandelion doesn't. So there are all these different kinds of very subtle differences between plants that if you don't know, can make it really dangerous to eat these things. And going back to the issue of land spirits, a lot of people who forage, I mean, they're getting back into it now, so they're really excited to go pick all these wild plants and delicious things, and that's great. But then they overharvest, and overharvesting harms the local environment. So, you know, there are ways to make sure that you don't, but in general, when people overharvest, it takes it away from the animals that need it to live, and it destroys the native population so they can't grow back as quickly. And when that happens, you end up getting a desolate landscape because all of that natural resource just got picked to shit. And lastly, this is one that I actually didn't expect, but you can get into legal trouble foraging. Not everywhere is legal to forage, especially on like private grounds. And there are also certain species that are endangered, so you can't just go picking them willy-nilly, to make whatever salads you want with them. You have to make sure that wherever you're going to forage is public land and someplace where you're not picking things that are endangered and protected by law. But with all those pros and cons, if you want to forage, there are a couple ways to make sure that you can go about it safely. And first of all, the main thing you gotta understand is that it is best to get a field mentor. If you can find someone who's running classes on how to forage, or just someone in your area who really knows and has been doing it for a long time and is well trained and well reputed, go to them. And if you can't find someone like that in your area, field guides are not a replacement for that kind of expertise, because obviously they can go out to the field with you and point out these things that you're looking for. But a good book on the plants in your area and on just general foraging and medicine and all these other kinds of things like herbal medicine, these will go a long way, but you still want to be very, very, very careful. The last thing you want to do is accidentally poison yourself picking things that look good but are actually not. And this is especially true for mushrooms. There was probably a mushroom that I could have picked and taken home and eaten, because I'm pretty sure it was a hen of the woods mushroom. It was on a stump, it looked just like it, but I still was not going to run that risk of poisoning myself and my boyfriend with this mushroom that I found on a tree stump. That would be a very bad thing to do. Mushrooms are even more dangerous to deal with than just like your average plants, because there are so many mushrooms that, depending on the stage of the fruiting body's growth, can look completely different. For instance, one mushroom might look just like an edible one, but it's actually at like an early stage of development, and so you can't tell that it's actually, a different, completely toxic mushroom. Whenever you are picking mushrooms, if you pick mushrooms, double check, triple check, and then check again a fifth time if you need to. You can never be too safe with those. And another thing, like I said, with the overharvesting issue, the general wisdom is to leave 50% of whatever it is you're harvesting. If you find a big patch of, say, like morel mushrooms, or if you find like, a lot of berries or something, leave 50%, because first of all, other people are going to want to come by and harvest some. Second of all, the birds and the animals still need something to eat. And third of all, the things that are growing won't be able to grow back very effectively. They won't be able to scatter their seeds and make more of themselves if you're taking everything. And with this comes making sure that you're not just like stomping through like a giant through wherever else you're trying to forage. Wherever you're going, try not to break branches. Try not to like stomp out any grass or leaves. Be careful where you're walking. Be careful what you're swinging under and going through. Disturb the area as little as possible. Do as little damage as possible when you are out there. And lastly, and this is a tip that unfortunately for me really sucks, because I actually do have a lot of wildflowers growing in my area. I live in a very wooded area, so there are tons of dandelions and violets and, yarrow and mugwort and all these other kinds of things that I could use, except for the fact that they're on the roadside. Any plants that are on the roadside or are, say, like maybe in a parking lot that receives runoff from cars, you don't want to harvest those plants because they suck up all the fumes from the exhaust, they suck up all of that grossness from the cars, and you don't want to eat that. If you guys have ever seen like Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind, where all the plants are poisonous except for the ones that she grows in her house because they're not sucking up poisonous fumes, that's basically the situation. You don't want to take stuff that's on the roadside. That's a great way to like eat all kinds of nastiness that you really don't want to be eating. Kind of negates the health benefits if it's full of pollution. And of course, make sure, again, as I said, that it is a place that is public and available for people to go and pick stuff, and that you're not picking something that's endangered. Me personally, I would love to forage, but as I said, you know, a lot of the stuff near me, it's not really safe because of the cars that pass by, and also I don't have the time or the wherewithal to go out deep into the woods and go find all these things. I would love to, but I don't have the time. However, if you live in an area, or even like in an urban area, sometimes you can find stuff growing out of the cracks in the concrete. If you could find these things wherever you're going, and you think that it's a safe thing to do, you look into it, you get the resources in the books, and you know what you're doing, by all means, have a blast. Do what you gotta do, and use those in your magic as well, right? Like, for instance, we think of the sun when we think of oranges or anything else in Scott Cunningham's book. We think of walnuts, we think of any of the other herbs and spices, most witches use, but the dandelion is a very sunny little plant. It's literally a bright yellow flower, so you can make a lot of magical associations with the things in your area, and by getting to know them more and by getting to know the land spirits around them. So with all that said, if you guys are going to go out and forage, I wish you the best. I also wish that you stay safe, that you do your due diligence, and that you make sure that if you are in doubt, do not eat something. Do not eat something if you are not sure. Never do that. But there are ways to do it, and so you may find a cool group near you, you might make some friends, do some stuff, and with all that said, I wish you the best on your Kitchen Witch foraging adventures. See ya! By the way, if you want to see these videos 2 weeks earlier, consider subscribing to my Patreon, where you not only get all these videos, but also recipe cards, specific deity profiles, and lots of other interesting things to look at. Video tiers start at $10 a month, so definitely consider checking it out.